Hello students. Earlier we spoke about what are life processes. Today we will talk about the first process in detail, that is nutrition. Now what do we mean by nutrition? The process of acquiring food for nourishment and sustenance of the organism is called as nutrition. There are two types of nutrition seen: autotrophic nutrition and heterotrophic nutrition. When an organism will synthesize its own food in the presence of sunlight or chemicals, we call it as autotrophic nutrition. Whereas when an organism is depending on the autotrophs for consumption of food, we call it as heterotrophic nutrition. If an organism synthesizes food in presence of sunlight, it is called photoautotroph. We have plants as an example. If an organism is synthesizing food in presence of chemicals, we call it chemoautotroph. We have few bacteria like nitrogen-fixing bacteria as example. The process of synthesizing food in plants in presence of sunlight is called photosynthesis. Photo means light, synthesis means to generate. So the term actually means to generate food in presence of sunlight. In this process, we see that carbon dioxide reacts with water to form glucose, ATP, and releases oxygen. Now, this entire process is happening inside the leaf where there's presence of a specific pigment called chlorophyll. Now, this pigment is responsible to absorb light. So, the entire process happens in presence of sunlight. For this process, the raw material required, like water and minerals, are taken up from soil. Carbon dioxide is taken up from the surrounding atmosphere. Light energy is taken from the sunlight. All the raw materials taken up by the plant are utilized in presence of chlorophyll, which is the light-absorbing pigment. Now let us understand where actually the process of photosynthesis is happening. It is inside a leaf. Let us look at the cross-section of leaf. So there is an upper epidermis, this entire upper epidermis. Then we have the mesophyll layer, and then there is lower epidermis. In the lower epidermis, we see that there are many stomata present. So these are all the stomata present. And we see that each of these stomata has a stomatal pore present. So the stomatal pore can open and there is entry of the carbon dioxide molecule seen, and also it can close. And we see that when there is exit of oxygen molecules, it will again open and close. Inside the guard cells, we'll see that there are specific organelles present called as chloroplast. Chloroplast is the actual site of photosynthesis process. This is called the kitchen of leaf. And we see that the process of light reaction happens in this thylakoid region, and the process of dark reaction will happen in the stroma region. Moving ahead, let us talk about heterotrophic nutrition. When the organisms are depending on autotrophs to procure their energy, we call them heterotrophs. Now we see that there are three types of heterotrophs. We have parasitic, we have saprophytic, and holozoic. Now parasitic organisms, we will see that they depend on a host organism to procure their energy. For example, we have Ascaris, which is present in a man's intestine and it will feed on the man. We see that it will also cause a diseased condition. We also have Cuscuta, which is a parasitic plant. Next, we have saprophytic nutrition, where we see that these organisms are depending on dead and decayed organisms. So they derive their energy from dead organisms. For example, we have Amanita muscaria, which is a type of mushroom, which is also depending on decomposing organisms, could be plants or animals. The next type we have is Holozoic mode of nutrition. In this, we will see that the organism will consume a part or a whole entire organism or a plant. We see that there is a 5-step process which is involved in this. We have ingestion, we have digestion, we have absorption, assimilation, and egestion of food. Now, ingestion is consumption of the food, whereas digestion is the breakdown of complex food substances into simpler ones. And these simpler ones are absorbed and then utilized and assimilated. Then we see that there is elimination of the unwanted food by egestion. Holozoic nutrition is observed in unicellular and multicellular organisms. Let us understand in unicellular organisms by taking an example of amoeba. The process of Holozoic mode of nutrition in amoeba is called as phagocytosis. In ingestion, we see that there is engulfment of the food substance. So whenever amoeba is coming in contact with the food substance, it will slowly form a false sheet called as pseudopodia, and it will engulf the substance. In digestion, we see that this food substance is broken down into simpler forms. In absorption, these simpler forms are absorbed by the cell, and in assimilation, we see that there is utilization of these nutrients. In egestion, we will see that there is elimination of the unwanted food substances. Hence, we have understood that even though amoeba is a single-celled organism, it will exhibit all the 5 steps of Holozoic mode of nutrition. If we see, even multicellular organisms like human beings will exhibit the same procedure for acquiring nutrition. We see that they have ingestion of food, digestion of food, absorption of food, assimilation of food, and egestion of food. Hence, we have understood heterotrophic nutrition. The process of acquiring food for nourishment and maintenance of an organism is called nutrition. Nutrition is of 2 types called autotrophic and heterotrophic nutrition. Autotrophic nutrition includes organisms which can synthesize their own food in presence of sunlight called photoautotrophs and in presence of chemicals called chemoautotrophs. Heterotrophic nutrition includes organisms which depend on autotrophs to procure energy. Heterotrophic nutrition is of 3 types called parasitic nutrition, saprophytic nutrition, and Holozoic mode of nutrition.